I grew up exposed to the pro-life movement at a very young age. My mom volunteered at a crisis pregnancy center. Both my parents were active in going to conferences and marches, and I always went along with them. The changing point in my life, though, was when I was in my first year of university. I went to a pro-life conference in Toronto for university students, and a speaker there named Scott Klusendorf spent the whole day taking us through all the arguments people propose for why abortion is right and how we can respond to them to show why abortion is wrong. And I was very impressed with everything that he was saying. I knew I could put it into practice back at university. One thing in particular that he said which struck me deeply was that he said there are more people working full-time to kill babies than there are working full-time to save them. I went back to university and changed my major. I was so struck by those words and his whole presentation, and 3.5 years later when I graduated, I went into pro-life ministry full-time. My role within the organization is primarily educational. I travel to churches, high schools, and universities, training people in the logic of the pro-life perspective. The young people today are a part of a survivor generation because all the young people today who were born at a time when abortion was legal, and they could have been killed, but thankfully they weren't. And so that puts the burden of responsibility on us as young people to want to share with others what could have happened to us, what happened to our peers, friends we never know, perhaps future spouses we'll never meet, not because they never existed, but because they never existed long enough for us to get to know them and build that relationship with them, and that's because their lives were ended through abortion. So it's my hope that as people realize that, as they recognize their own dignity and their own value, that they would want to convey that message to others, that all of us are valuable, not because of what we do, because of how we look, or even because of how other people feel about us, but instead because of who we are as valuable human beings. I guess you could say one of my favorite saints is Saint Therese, the little flower. I prayed many novenas to her for roses. She is my confirmation saint, and she's an example of a young person who at a young age felt very called to do something, and in her case it was to be a nun, and she wanted to get in to be a nun far younger than the age allowed. She had to be older, but she pushed and pushed for that, and in her simple way in her daily life tried to make a difference and grow closer to God. You know, a lot of people say, oh, well, saints are perfect people. Far from it. The best saint will tell you they're the biggest sinner. And there's a Christian song that I've heard that has a great line about saints, which says, saints are just the sinners who fall down and get up. And I think that really is an important message for young people to remember, to look at a saint who lived during a time period that may have been very difficult, very challenging, and those people were able to stay strong in their faith, and where they failed, they just went back to God with a repentant heart. So they're an example for us, just as our friends, our parents, or other people would be. They're just a little bit further back in history.